Good evening, my brothers and sisters. It gives me great pleasure. Let me welcome you, first of all, to this presentation of Mango Tree Dialogues, and to thank you for joining me because, frankly, there are so many other things that you could be concerned about, so many other places that you could be at this time. If you're looking for a news source, I, there are other places that you could get your news from, and in that you chose to join me under the mango tree so that we can have a discussion and a dialogue this evening. It fills me with a great deal of pleasure and joy. All right. Well, let me ask you, how have how has your day been? I'm getting a little tongue tied there for a while. And I ask that question because there's something, if I should say, one of the things that has been on my mind is the whole question of the hot summer months into which we have entered. As a matter of fact, the months seem to be getting hotter and hotter each year. And we have begun to see how hot this particular year is turning out to be. Those who forecast these things and analyze these things, the meteorologists, they tell us that so far, we're having much hotter weather than we have had last year. So the point I'm making then is that it is very, very important that we keep ourselves hydrated, to drink adequate amounts of water. You notice I didn't say lots of water, because you're going to drink what you feel your body adequately can accommodate, and that's all right. You know your body, but the key is drink water. I cannot stress that enough because there are so many people, oddly enough, who don't like drinking water for some reason. And frankly, we don't just go and deliberately drink water. We drink water as we get thirsty, but sometimes the bodily functions are taking place at a point where you're dehydrated. Dehydration means that your body lacks liquid or fluid, and gets dry, and you know that your body really needs water because 70% of the body is water, and that's how important it is. So keep a bottle somewhere nearby. I tend to have water bottles all over the place uh, because I just want to be able to grab it. As a matter of fact, I've got one here right now. And I guess I get thirsty when I'm talking, but outside of that, I have it present, so because it does help uh, in really keeping me hydrated. So I just want to say that for summer, it is so important, especially, and it's gonna get worse, I think, as we move into July and into August. We'll get rains, and thank God for the rains, because that will mitigate the heat somehow and make it a little better for us. But just to start on that light note, if it is a light note, it's a very heavy matter, as a matter of fact, but you get the message, friends. All right. So, what are the other things that are on my mind this evening? Uh, from the US point of view, there are a number of things that have been happening. And one of the things that has occupied the media today is the verdict, the guilty verdict that has been given to Mr. Hunter Biden, the son of the president. It has set a precedent because it is the first time in the history of the country, as far as we can know, we can recall, that a child of the president, of a president, is being convicted of a felonious action by a court of law. So it's a big thing. And however we may view what has taken place, whether we think it was just given the circumstances of his addiction, whether we think that somehow, the system was unfair to him. There is that thing, that stubborn thing called the rule of law. And the rule of law, as it is exercised in this country, is one that applies to every single person. There is that mantra that no one is above the law. And so it is a very tragic thing in some way, because when he bought the gun, and what he was convicted of is that he bought this gun, at a time when he was an addict. He was seriously addicted to substances. And he had to fill out a form to purchase the gun. And the indication is that he lied on the form. And that is one of the reasons that he was brought before the courts. And that is a serious offense, because you can understand that if somebody is addicted to any substance at all, that substance can cause very serious impairment of judgment, of cognitive, mental judgment of situations. And that person can be a danger not only to himself or herself, but to others. So that is a burden of that. As a matter of fact, I understand that behind the scenes, there were some jurors there was a kind of split among the jurors, because there was the thinking that some thought that he was not guilty and so on. But so when they re-examined the evidence that was presented, they all concluded unanimously that he was guilty of what he was charged. But it's tragic, not only because he was an addict, and one wonders now, whether there may be a setback for him as a result of this. But we wish him all the very best. And we have no doubt that whatever unfurls, we don't know what the sentencing is going to be like. But the law will take its course. I have a very strong suspicion for myself that I don't think he'll get any custodial sentence. If you listen to the lawyer on the prosecution side, when the verdict was rendered and he was giving an address to the press, he seemed to come across, in a kind of measured tone, and in a tone to give the impression that yes, he was guilty of what he was charged for, but there is a kind of mitigating sense in which he could probably be seen in a merciful light. Let me just put it that way. And I hope for his sake, he doesn't get a custodial sentence, but that he probably be given community work to do and so on. And friends, as I thought of that verdict, and by the way, before the verdict was even rendered, President Biden was interviewed on a program, ABC. David Muirhead had him on his program. And he asked him the question very pointedly, will you pardon him. And he said no, he wouldn't do that. And he would not interfere with the system. And since the verdict has been rendered, he has stated that he accepts the court's decision. And I cannot help but contrast that to another case that the whole world by this knows about. And I don't even have to mention it for you to know what it is. Because we're talking about the case of the 34 counts, felony counts, of which President Trump, former President Donald Trump, has been convicted of, all 34. And that too was unprecedented, because it is the first time in our living memories that we know of a president who has been convicted in a court of law for doing something like that. You know, doing a crime, being a criminal. And you know what is interesting? And now people who were criticizing, especially members of the Republican Party who have been criticizing that particular decision, they have railed against it. They have said that the justice system has been weaponized against Trump. They say that the system has been rigged against him. You know, when it comes to the law, you know, it has a very funny way of playing out itself. Because here it is, as soon as he got his verdict, it was just a week or two after now that we hear of the president's son. The very president that he says has weaponized the Justice Department against him. The same system that he claims has been rigged against him. I don't know what is so important about him that a whole justice system has to be arrayed against him, form itself into an enemy against him. But that aside, you cannot help but see the contrast between how President Biden reacts to his own son being convicted and how Trump has reacted to his and his supporters and his followers. Are they now going to say that the system was rigged against Hunter Biden? Are they going to say that Garland weaponized in choosing a Republican prosecutor, investigator? Is he now going to say that he weaponized the justice system against Hunter? What are they going to say now? I noticed that many of them who were very vociferous, they have been very quiet. They can understand that. What are they going to say now? But of course, they'll find something. They'll find some way to wiggle around it. But one thing the system demonstrates, and nobody says that the system is flawless or without fault at any given time. We know that it isn't. And to know that the same system that worked against Trump in finding him guilty is this very same system of justice that has now put the president's son in legal jeopardy. So we have to think about a number of things there. and to decide in our minds what is what. Is the system as fair as it can be? And sensible people and well-thinking people must not allow themselves to be hoodwinked by the agenda of those who want to poison the system, poison the well of justice in order to carry out their own, to have their own agenda promoted. Well-thinking people must look on and don't allow their intelligence to be insulted by those who say that the system is not fair and that it is rigged and all that. Because one person who, with on the dint of hard evidence, has been found guilty, believes that he's above the law. He has done no wrong. In fact, he can do no wrong. Having a kind of messianic complex that gives the impression that everybody else is at fault, but I can never be at fault. So that rested on my mind a bit because, I really wondered, just where the thinking of many Americans are with these two cases and how important they are in determining the way forward for this country. Again, the system is not flawless, but I think it does its best. Yes, there are times when it has been arrayed against Black people, especially, and there are far too many Black people in this country that are incarcerated in proportion to their population, and the population and the large size of other populations, such as the Caucasian population. Far too many. But that's a subject for another time, I guess. But for now, the rule of law has triumphed in these two cases. So that was on my mind. All right. And there's still another thing that I have been concerned about. And that has to do with the elections in Europe. Friends, when people are busy about their daily concerns and things are high in the supermarket and mortgage rates are high and rental is high, and for the ordinary person going about his or her business, life is tough. Life is difficult. Who's going to have time to think about elections in Europe? And some of you might be saying, no, you're wasting my time. You probably have gotten up and gone. Or probably you're listening to this and you say, I can't even bother. I'm listening to this section. Elections in Europe? What does that have to do with me in Jamaica, in Barbados, in Florida, in Georgia? Well, I just want to make a connection. Because there is an important development in these elections that speak to the development of a particular ideology that we have seen emerge in the world recently. Probably it's been here a good 10, probably 20 years. It has always been here. Let's be frank. The tendency towards authoritarianism, the tendency towards dictatorship, the tendency towards totalitarianism, that has always been in the minds of people, but it has remained kind of dormant since the ending of the Second World War in 1945. It has remained a bit dormant. now and again you see it raise its head, especially in Europe. But today, it has not just raised its head, but it has gone full blast in people's minds as an alternative to the democracy that I believe you and I hold dear. Us going about our business, us being able to speak our own minds without any fear of being locked up for saying what we want to say. We not having to be led by what one person says. And if you do not subscribe to a particular ideology or philosophy, you can be locked away in prison or killed for it. That impulse in the human condition has always been there. But what we find very interesting now with these, and that is why the elections in Europe, because recently the election with in France, Macron's party, and which is a Democratic Party, was given a heavy trouncing by the far right under Marine Le Pen. She has picked up a number of more seats in the parliament. And parliament is where legislation takes place. What they pass there is what is going to affect the lives of French people. The same thing happened in Germany, where the far right, was very successful. And the far right is comprised of some of these remnants of the Nazi mentality and situation, going all the way back to Hitler. It was a very big surprise because people never expected such a very strong showing on the part of these far-right groups. And in the European Union elections, there was a tilt too, and some would say more than a tilt, a lurch towards the right. And the only reason that the major party there, the ruling party in the European Union, was saved itself and was not run over by the far-right groups, is that there was a movement more to the right on the part of the ruling party to give some kind of sense that they were not that far detached from what the far right policies would want, for example, in the area of immigration. Because immigration is a big elephant in the room. And I say that to kind of make the link between what has happened in Europe and what is happening here in the United States. Because there is that resurgence of this sympathy with totalitarian views. And I find it very interesting. And you remember my in the last conversation that I had with you, we talked about D-Day and what was achieved on D-Day when the Allied armies invaded France, and in Normandy, how many were killed and so on. In defense of democracy. I find it very interesting that 80 years after the event, that the world is bowing again to this authoritarian tendency in the human condition. And that is something that we're going to have to be very concerned about, because we see it here in this country. It's something that we're going to have to spend some more time on later on. But it is a very, very serious problem for those of us who believe in democracy, who believe in people's freedoms, believe in people's ability to express themselves without fear of a dictator locking you away because you dare to criticize or to disagree with what he or she thinks. And that is why I think the elections are important. Yes, it's not bread and butter just yet, but it can become so. Because we're living in a globalized world. And especially here in the United States, whatever happens here will have a marked impact upon the rest of the world. There's no doubt about that. That is why it's on my mind. That's why it bothers me, as a matter of fact, because your whole sense of freedom can be totally upended. And I think it's something that we need to be very concerned about. All right. And the final thing that is on my mind, and I go to Jamaica, is that very quickly, and this is something that we'll probably spend some more time on Thursday when we come again. The Ministry of Education, the permanent secretary, Mrs. Casson-Troop, Dr. Casson-Troop, at a speech that she gave at the Montego Bay Convention Center to some teachers, a group of teachers, she said that the ministry has spent billions of dollars to procure laptops and a suite of Microsoft software in the 365 series to assist teachers to do lesson plan and to make work easier for them and to give them gadgets that they can function, because they have been crying out for resources and they provided these resources. But the sad thing is that many of them are not using these resources, that some of them have not even turned on. The laptops and so on that have been given to them. Well, I heard the president of the JTA, the Jamaica Teachers Association, he came out and said that, well, one of the reasons why it appears as if teachers have not been using these gadgets is because in many parts of the country, especially in the rural areas, they have a Wi-Fi problem and they're not able to log on to take advantage of it. And there could be a point there, but I don't think when you listen to the gravamen of the concern that the permanent secretary had, it went deeper than that. Take the matter of lesson plans, for example. Lesson plans are some of the most, when you talk to a teacher and you talk about lesson plan, you're talking about many times pulling teeth, because there's so much that goes into that and the amount of time that it consumes that teachers were bawling out and said that they needed to have some resource to save them from this having to do all of these lesson plans like that. And I have a sense about lesson plans. I remember back in the day, I was a teacher. I started out as a teacher. And later on, when I was teaching at a tertiary institution, Church Teachers College. Yes, my career has taken meandering turns. I remember having to go to supervise teachers who were doing practice teaching. And lesson plans were always one of the big bugbears among teachers. So I can understand what that is like. But now through the Microsoft system, I put it no more than that, they have been given this wonderful resource and they seem not to be using it. So that is something that is emerging there now, and billions of dollars has been spent. One thing that the JTA president said is that sometimes the ministry just goes ahead and buy things. So there seems to be without any kind of consultation with them in terms of the needs that are on the ground. And that could very well be the case. So we need to balance the thing and find out exactly what is going on. You're going to hear some more about this. a little later on, as the thing emerges. And it is something that, you know, is of concern. All right. So those are the things that are on my mind. We'll be back here. Oh, by the way, friends, there is a change in the number of evenings that we will be coming. We'll be coming now on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And remember, we won't be doing Wednesdays, but we'll be doing Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the information is going to be up on the channel. And of course, you can go there and listen to this broadcast. All the live broadcasts are there. So you can go there and you can listen at your own leisure, because it's there. Just go there, go to the site, and you will be able to just pick it up. And while you're there, just subscribe to the site, and I'm sure you like what I'm saying. So just do a like while you're there. All right, I'm going to close off this evening, and I just like to thank you for joining me. And hope that you have had a good day, a hydrated day. There's nothing wrong with drinking a little water before bed. I hear that it helps. I do it, and it seems to help. Yeah, people say, "Oh, you're gonna send me to the bathroom very often," but it doesn't necessarily happen unless there are other um, situations that may make that happen. But nonetheless, I'd like to wish for you a very good night and ask you to join me again on Thursday, which will be Jamaica and diaspora matters. And I'm hoping to have a discussion with someone under the mango tree with regard to certain matters relating to the Jamaican experience. So I invite you to join me again. And as I said, the presentation is up live, so you can go there at any time and check it out. All right, so let me thank you and ask you to walk good as you have a good night. Bye-bye.